Okay, we are back Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific on the Teflon Tales. With me today, I have Kevin Metcalf, who is the CEO of the National Child Protection Task Force. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And a shout out to Aisha Prakash, who made the intro, I think, less than a week ago. So it's a it's a quick meet, and then having you on the show. Now, I want to kind of walk a little bit back in your life timeline, right? When you were a federal air marshal, and a few things happened that caused you to kind of hit stop that career literally mid-flight, and then switch careers to kind of get on what you are right now. So again, going back to the Teflon analogy, talk a little bit about that background and then what you do today.
Okay. Yeah, that background. I started off in 1988, so I went through basic training for the military. So since 1988, I've been involved in either military, state, local, or federal law enforcement. I'm now a prosecuting attorney by day, but the task force, the way that came about, when I was working in federal law enforcement, I was out of the country a lot, and the girl's mom at the time had died many years ago, but I've had my girls by myself since they were 2 and 5 years old up until a few years ago I remarried. But raising two girls by yourself, and I was never the kind of guy who knew how to braid hair, do any of this stuff, but I learned on YouTube. So I got really involved. I ended up leaving federal law enforcement and returning back into Arkansas, where I was from, attending law school. Now, I was attending law school as a full-time single dad. I was working on the side, doing some other things. So I really got to experience what it was like as a single parent, as the only parent, and the one doing all the work, the one having to try to pay for childcare while not making much money. So I have a whole new respect for single moms, single parents in general. I know there are single dads out there. So this experience, I brought with me over 20 years of law enforcement experience on the ground, investigative and work in the street and different things. So I went to law school. As I was going through law school, I had different challenges, but I graduated, and instead of going back to the U.S. Attorney's Office where I had planned, I stayed put because my girls were stable for the first time ever. And there's one theme that goes through childhood. Childhood is so very important. And my girls were finally stable and actually experiencing a childhood with me being there. And I was real busy, but I was still there. That childhood, became such a fixation for me. Especially thinking back on my own childhood. I had dreams of being a superhero, of being a cop, a soldier, something where I could stand up for people to help people. That was always my goal. But I had those dreams. I could be anything I wanted, or that was my thought, and I had nothing in my life that would have prevented me from that. So as a prosecutor, I used that experience. I started taking on these cases involving cell phones, any mobile devices, computers, social media, and I got drug into the world of child sexual exploitation, of some of the horrible things that happen to them. So I started teaching cell phone investigations across the country for both prosecutors and investigators. And as I would do that, I would always say, if you need any help, let me know. So I started working more and more investigations in a wider range of states and locations. And I got pretty good at it. So I helped in the recovery of 3 or 4 girls that were taken by online sexual predators a few years ago. And that really thrust me out into the open. Before that, I was saying, don't mention me. I don't want any credit. Don't mention my name anywhere. Now I got thrust out, so I'm being asked to go speak at the National Cybercrime Conference in Boston, the NYPD conference. I've spoken at various conferences. Now I'm speaking at international conferences. That led me to meet more people. And they saw what I was doing. I was volunteering my time to help agencies that didn't have this expertise, that didn't have these resources. And as I've gone along now, I met with Kevin Branzetti a few years ago, and we started having these discussions, and more of these experts, more of these high-performing people wanted in. And now it is a network of experienced investigators, experienced prosecutors, We've got international law enforcement with us. We've got active duty military that have been cleared to work on cases involving children, plus some of them, like Naval Investigative Services, Army CID, the Air Force, they have law enforcement capabilities. They actually investigate this stuff anyway, so they're free to join in. And we also have tech companies, tech professionals that have teamed up with us to help us figure out how to work these investigations involving technology and how to do it better. So anyway, all this kind of came together, and now we work any cases that where technology touches an investigation, but the priority is missing, exploited, and trafficked children. So that's kind of a long-winded background of how we're
No,
doing here.
yes, as you were kind of describing that, I mean, a lot of emotions obviously came to mind, right? I mean, you talked about your childhood, and it's very obviously your personal story, and along the way, indicators that every one of us actually sees in our lives, right? But many of us choose to ignore it. Many of us see it, but say it's too hard to kind of take a fork in the road, but you did. I just want to call out one of our viewers over here. Good morning, Dharampal Singh. So talk about something that you and I had chatted about when we met last week, and that's something that's so true for everybody, but particularly I think something you live and breathe every single day, which is compartmentalization. To be able to stand up every single day and go about it, and like you mentioned, there's technology obviously, but then there's surveillance, there is prosecution, and then the part that I missed in a comment earlier today, which is the follow through. And to be able to kind of see a child, he or she recover, and then be able to kind of track that their life. So how has compartmentalization helped you maintain a sense of balance?
I think if you talk to my wife or anybody who knows me, there's no sense of balance. I'm full tilt into this, and it's really difficult because it's so pervasive, and you don't come out of this undamaged. The law enforcement people that are working in this field, there is damage that occurs, and there's no way you can get around it. That is not talked about, and these investigators that have to work undercover, they have to see these things. The prosecutors that have to see this. You don't come out of this unscathed. I have seen people just break down from actually having to be involved in this, and they can't do it. They have to go to do something else. They have to cycle out of it. I'm very fortunate in my personality. I have been able to compartmentalize very well, I think. And I've been able to separate that enough. I think one of the things is I'm very mission focused. So I'm always focused on the mission, and I'm always looking for the next case or the next lead in an investigation. But going back to that, you have to have people, and the people that have stuck with us in the National Child Protection Task Force, the ones that are active every day, that keep coming back for more. There is a passion that you can feel it. And it's that mission. And once you recover that first child, once you identify and participate in the arrest of that first predator, it becomes almost an obsession. So I think the people that we have that keep coming back are, they have these personalities. They're a little bit better able to work this out, however, in their mind, and compartmentalize it that way. Now, I will say that one of our volunteers is married to a psychiatrist, and I have not talked to her about saying her name or anything, but she is a trauma psychiatrist, and she is very, very well versed in this, and has not only offered her own services, so any of my people can contact her 24/7, but she has also brought a team of mental health professionals in if we need that, and that is absolutely vital to anybody working in this space.
So we have a friend of yours saying hi to you, Barbara Jean Wilson.
Now, Barbara Jean Wilson right here. She is our director of survivor resources. And Barbara you need to have her on your show. Barbara is such a wonderful person. Her own story, she was trafficked by her own mother from the age of 8. Wow. Trafficked by her own mother. And I can't imagine a bigger violation of trust. That is something most Americans don't want to acknowledge, that parents, caregivers, siblings, relatives can be the ones that are doing the trafficking. These kids can be in their home. They can be in bed every night, their own bed, and still be trafficked. That's one of the things that we don't realize. And I think the word trafficking causes so many connotations, so many problems with that. But Barbara has, I thought I knew a lot, but in speaking to Barbara, her story is so amazing that to listen to her when the abuse started at the age of 8, the personality change that happened. She went from being this good kid in school to being the problem kid in school. And you know what that causes for teachers. That's a problem kid. We don't look into the deeper problem. What's going on in her life that caused her for this change? You know, why there's so much we could get into there, but Barbara is such a wonderful person. We've been bringing in her expertise and her insight into training law enforcement, talking to law enforcement. She talked about running away one time, and who her mom would bring men. These were the customers. That's how they paid their bills. Those were the men that were raping her and abusing her. Her mom showed up with a male police officer, and to her as a little child looking up, this is just another man with her mom. So, you know, there's so much that we don't think about, that we really need that survivor input. Law enforcement needs to hear that survivor input. Teachers, the educational system needs to hear that survivor input. And we need to know that sometimes when kids run away, they're running away from something. What is that they're running away from?
Hey, Barbara, so you're definitely coming on my show. I think we need, I completely agree with you, right? I'm at a loss of words, just going through and virtually thinking about what that might look like. Another fan of yours, Kadambari, let's talk a little bit about, I know this is something that I found to be very compelling, but anything you can add to for the people out there in terms of how do you compartmentalize? I mean, you mentioned law enforcement. There's clearly the work that you do. There are people in healthcare, frontline workers, even people who've lost their jobs. You talked about single parents. I mean, any tips for the viewers in terms of how do you go about really creating that isolation?
That I am not a mental health professional. I can talk about myself. Yeah. I have to physically work out. I have to physically make myself get away from this screen right here. Yeah. I try to put up the phone. I try to walk away from it. I'm not always successful. I have working on meditation has been a big part of my life for a long time. I read a lot, and I try to read outside of technology. I try to read the classics. Anything in that I've read the Odyssey, you know, some other things. Reread them recently. The Hobbit. Try to get something going on that's going to get my mind outside of this, and it is extremely hard with me. It's extremely hard with people who just have nothing but an obsession to hunt the next bad guy and to find the next kid.
Yeah, and that again goes back to something that is very emblematic of the whole Teflon analogy, right? Which is the ability to cool down as quickly as you can heat up, right? Which goes back to the balance that you mentioned. So one other thing that, again, from a life cycle perspective, right? I mean, you come in, you have to learn a lot of things. And you mentioned technology, but then there's also human emotion, there's mental health issues, and being able to assess whether volunteers who want to come in and help you, whether they have the mental strength to be able to carry this through. But like you and I were chatting is, I mean, these things can leave deep scars for life. So these are certainly certain skills that you've had in your prior life, but others that you're acquiring as you go along, right? Again, how do you go about learning new stuff?
Yeah, and I want to say, you said something there, mental strength, you know, to deal with this. And I want to point out that the people who can't deal with it, they're some of the strongest people I know, but they can't work in this realm. And I even have a couple of men, very respected men, who come in to try to help out, but they, you know, confided saying that they had experienced sexual abuse in their childhood. And I run across more men than you would think. And just for them having the guts to come say that's huge. So we can push them off into, there's plenty of other work, but you know, the mental strength, these survivors are some of the strongest people I have ever met. But yeah, there's so much to do, so many things that come together. We have people that are experts in geolocation and working off images. being able to manipulate images to pull small details out. We have people who are experts in open source intelligence, and we have I don't know how many languages we have spoken in our nonprofit, or how many countries we reach. We're a group of people who do things a little differently, but everybody comes together and does their part. So it's difficult.
Yeah, so talking about something else, again, going back to looking at your title, I wouldn't have imagined that, but you were talking about wildlife trafficking as well, right? So it's
Yes.
again, something that, how did that come about? And again, what was the learnings and unlearnings over there?
Well, the learnings that, you and I were talking about privacy and security, which I'm a big privacy guy. It doesn't really matter if you're carrying a cell phone. It doesn't matter if you're doing wildlife trafficking, if you're a terrorist, if you're doing property crimes, if you're carrying a cell phone, if you're just the average citizen, all this stuff works the same way. You hunt people the same way within this, this realm. So learning how to walk through that data is something that is constantly changing. Technology is not the same today as it was 2 weeks ago. Facebook will find some technique to use in there, and then Facebook will kill it. I'm just using Facebook as an example.
Yeah.
But that happens across the board. And you know what? I have forgotten where I was going when I started down this path. What was your question again?
No, it was essentially trying to understand in terms of the ability to multitask, but also the part that you mentioned, right? And you're taking me off on something. We'll come back to this question, but I think you touched upon something that I want to double click on, which is privacy and security.
Yes.
You and I are big fans of that. Here is the question for you, right? Which is, on the one hand, we advocate making sure that you don't deviate, don't leave your digital trail, don't leave things that will come to haunt you. On the other hand, isn't that something that you use to actually hunt down these predators? So how do you, and again, you mentioned the cell phone and the traffic, we'll come back to the wildlife in a bit, but just to talk about privacy and security, it's like, is it two sides of the same coin? On the one hand, the good people shouldn't be leaving a digital trail, but on the other hand, we want the bad folks to leave digital trail behind so you can actually go hunt them down.
Yeah, it's definitely two sides of the same coin here. You've got OPSEC, operational security. You've got your own personal privacy and security. While on the other side, there are things that are going to be exploited for our benefit. Yeah, we take full advantage, and we learn a lot of things from criminals. Because if you're going to hunt criminals, you have to know how they operate. Have to know how they exploit things, right? But at the same time, I want to protect my kids. I want to protect my family. I want to protect other kids. I want to protect everybody around me. Not only that, I see so many adults, so many elderly, so many vulnerable people that are taken advantage of because they don't know anything about privacy. So if we don't teach privacy, that just puts everybody at risk.
Yeah.
Look at the number of breaches that are occurring. It's just more and more rapidly each day. Those breaches, if you reuse a password, for example, I can't tell you how many domestic violence survivors, how many women come in. They're victims of domestic violence, and they say, my ex knows everywhere I'm going. They know all this stuff about me, and I'll get an email address or something from them, and I'll look through breach data. I said, is this your password? Is this the password? Is this the email you use to log into your iTunes account or your Google Play, whatever it may be? And I say, yeah, how do you know that? Does your ex know any of your passwords? Probably. So, they've never changed their passwords, or they're recycling passwords, and their exes will log in. They're monitoring. We know how this works. You get some stalker, some ex, and it can go both ways. It can be men and women, but the thing is, we have to teach privacy. I need these survivors to be privacy. I need them to know how to use a password manager. I need them to know how to use two-factor authentication, hopefully with an authenticator app of some sort and not their own cell phone. I need them to know how to not give their cell phone number when they're standing there in line at a grocery store for those free points that you get.
Yeah.
But there's so much here that, I think it would be negligent of us as law enforcement if we did not focus on privacy and push that out and try to educate people on, these are the things you need to do and this is why, because you're being targeted. So, yeah, we're big privacy proponents. Also, the way that we do investigations, Kevin Branzetti, who has dealt with a lot of stuff in New York City, he is always monitoring. He's always talking to people with the ACLU, Brennan Center, different things about, hey, what if we did this? What do you think? But the thing is, it is so easy to get sidetracked on so many other people that it could be, that we have really boiled this down to precision targeting on a predator, precision targeting on a child that is being exploited, so much that the techniques that we're now using and the methods that we're using, I think, maximize privacy, the respect for privacy. They're the least intrusive means that we can get to. So we're doing this not only in a way that protects privacy, but we're also getting really good results, and we're not wasting our time going down false trails.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that, right? With so much to achieve and so little time and increasing. So the question where we both got sidetracked was about how did you expand your focus from child or children to wildlife?
For us, it's not really that different. The kind of people that we get with a passion for helping children have that same passion for helping wildlife. They have the same passion for helping anybody who's vulnerable out here. You've got, it's not just children that are being trafficked, that are being used. Forced labor. How many minorities do we have coming over here when we got forced labor that's going on? That doesn't get near the attention that it should. So I think that, children and wildlife, you're working these very vulnerable populations that can't stand up for themselves, that have no voice, that have nothing if we don't do something. And we have the skill set, and we're willing to use it and to volunteer it to help, any vulnerable population.
So going back to something that you mentioned about people who are able to come in and bring their passion every day, right? So lots of people talk about passion, right? I'm passionate about this, passionate about that. But then if you look at what they're doing with their lives, it's not aligned with the passion at all, right? So
Right.
Again, going back, any guidance that you have, right? If I have passions on the side, my work is over here, and again, your own journey, but also the volunteers that you've seen succeed to actually build their, focus their passion on something they believe in, what tips do you have?
Yeah, that is really, really difficult, because I would not have had an interest in working cell phones and social media and different things when I did, but it was something that was open. Nobody was doing it. And I was trying to find something where I could be useful. But I mean, children have always been, children and wildlife, animals, I've always had a very, very soft spot there. And I've always done everything I could to stand up for that population. How do you find that? I got to say, I don't think everybody's going to be able to make a living in whatever their passion is.
Yep.
But we have volunteers here that are okay with their daytime job. They get in, they do a great job, they advance. The passion they have found is jumping in as part of a team. There is no expectation of credit. You better not bring any ego to this thing, because everybody works together. You may have done a great job on this investigation, but you're not going to be gloating about it. You're going to teach everybody what you learned. And on the next investigation, it may not be you, maybe this other person over here. And when we are a very diverse group too, especially gender diverse, we have some incredibly strong women. It's just Aisha, for one, that helps out. We have so many, like Barbara, that come in and make such a difference and are so motivating for us in this. But how do you find your passion? That's not something I have an answer for.
Yeah, I guess everybody's journey is different, right? Like you're saying, some people, it's like they come in, they do their 9 to 5 job, but then they go outside and do it. And some people, quote unquote, luck out, though I wouldn't say it's luck. It's actually, it's hard work and failures. So one last question, again, talking about something that obviously everybody has to deal with, right? Which is learning through failures, the experimentation that comes with things that did not work out. So any things in your life that you said, okay, that didn't work out, but then it helped you navigate towards the next thing?
I have failed so many times in my life.
Hey, I'm part of the same club.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Meet the Robinsons? That movie?
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't seen it, that is one of my favorites for that reason. Keep moving forward. Yeah, you're going to fail. you're going to fail over and over again. But that's not what you're defined by. You're defined by those times when you get back up and you keep going. And we were talking about passion. I think if you want to find your passion, you're going to keep failing, but find something you believe in. Find a group that's doing some amazing work that could use some help, and volunteer. Don't expect credit. Don't go out and do this for your ego, but bring that out and try to make a difference in somebody's life who nobody's there for them.
Wow. Yeah. You couldn't have, I don't think better words than that, right? Help somebody who can't speak for themselves, help somebody that doesn't have a voice, right? So again, Kevin, thanks for continuing doing the amazing work. And I know you and I have a panel where we're talking about privacy and security next week. So I'm sure we're going to have more conversations as well. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.